program, our discussion program, PNP Live and Direct. I'm Delano Franklin, your host, and we have in this segment of the program Kishan Reed, who is a member of the People's National Party Youth Organization. He's 22 years of age and he's attending UCC and very active out there in the campaign for the People's National Party. What are some of the areas, for those who are listening and watching us, what are some of the critical geographical areas you have in that particular constituency?
So I must say the constituency is very diverse.
Yes.
When you talk about West Cumberland, Portmore Pines,
Yes.
Silverstone, Middle Class, Southborough, you talk about Newlands, Gregory Park, not so developed. And so the constituency is very diverse.
In other words, a constituency where most of those houses were built under the People's National Party.
Of course, and the 18 years of the People's National Party that a lot of persons, claim to say that they don't know anything about. Yeah.
So a lot of the young people who are living out there like yourself, they have a roof because of the People's National Party.
Because of the work of the People's National Party, yes.
Okay, excellent. So we can now focus on some of the issues during the course of this week. COVID-19 has been a big issue. What's your views on what is happening now? In fact, we are informed that 67.
Yeah, 67 new cases in the
cases.
past 24 hours. It goes to show that the PR that the outgoing administration has been putting on, the facade that they've been putting on, it goes so much on nowhere. It goes to show that we need proper leadership in place. We need persons in leadership position that actually cares for the people and person who have persons' well-being at hand.
At heart. In other words, when you talk about public relations of the government in this particular area,
The outgoing government.
Of the government, you're talking about market needs. Some $85 million, I understand, have been spent in this area. How young people like yourself view what has been spent as against how the outgoing government, as you refer to them, is dealing with it?
Careless. It's just careless. And for them to say that, one good term deserve another after all of that billions of dollars of taxpayers' money that has been wasted, it's just sad.
So when they speak of one good term deserves another, what aspect of the term they're talking about?
I'm not sure. I mean, if they're talking about a prison term, then sure. But another term in office, no.
Yeah, another term in office. Because when you look at what has gone to waste, no doubt in people's pocket during the period, some $14 billion Jamaican dollars, yes? You need to ask yourself, that term deserve another term?
A prison term, if you ask me. And to see that, the country is in dire need of development, and even our healthcare workers and essential workers in this present moment, for them to come and say that, we don't have enough PPEs and stuff like that, while, $14 billion was wasted and nobody was held accountable for it.
What could $14 billion do in the constituency in which you are working with Raymond Price?
We need proper housing infrastructure. We need training for our youths. And we need some sense of empowerment for the wider constituency.
When you say sense of empowerment, what do you mean?
First, we need to ensure that our youths have some pride in their community. So one of the plans that Raymond has in his manifesto is to have a training center, a center of excellence, so that, we have we have Heart Trust NTA, we have other training institutions come in the constituency and train our youths. So you give them a sense of empowerment, and by extension, it helps them to develop their constituency and to eliminate crime.
Talking with Kishan Reed. Kishan Reed is a member of the People's National Party
Youth Organization.
And Kishan Reed is also very active out there in the campaign over there in East Central, St. Catherine. And Kishan is pointing out to us what they over there could do through government with $14 billion.
And that is just a tip of the iceberg.
What's the nature of your campaign over there? How are you conducting your campaign? Because one of the things in the news during the course of this week is a very large motorcade, which we understand that the Jamaica Labour Party had in Mandeville, which goes against the protocol, because I understand that people were there unmasked, they were within touching distance.
Jamaica Labour Party is running a oligarchic government, a government.
You know, I don't understand the big words.
A government that the power is just in certain persons, and certain persons, can break the rules as they feel like, and nothing happens. The Jamaica Labour Party has proven over and over and over again that they're just for themselves. They're not for the mass and they're not for the Jamaican people. And we need to ensure that we get them out come September 3rd.
So when the Prime Minister goes around and say, listen, I am asking Jamaicans to adhere to the protocol, social distancing as we are doing inside here, wearing of masks and constantly sanitize, and then go ahead and organize a motorcade in Mandeville with people gathered in Mandeville, in Bridge. How do people like yourself and young people out there see that hypocrisy?
It's just talk.
Just talk.
Just talk. Nothing
Nothing
but
more.
talk and PR.
So what is it that you are doing over in your constituency now to try and ensure that we adhere to the protocols?
First,
That's
our campaign is centered around the constituents within East Central St. Catherine. So one thing that we ensure that we don't have more than 5 persons doing house to house. We ensure that they have on their masks, they have the sanitizers. We don't do large motorcades as the opposition party is doing. So we ensure that we adhere to the rules that they set to ensure that we keep our constituents safe, so that on the 3rd of September they can put their X beside the head.
Do you have extra masks out there in your constituency that you distribute?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
persons
So if
out
it's
there?
that we do a house to house and somebody says, Mr. Price or a member of the team, can I have a mask? We have a mask on hand and
And
sanitizers.
sanitizer.
Yeah.
So you are doing and following the protocols over there.
Yeah, we have town
Constituency.
criers. We have town criers going around reminding persons that COVID is still here. It is still a thing, and COVID still a keep. So we need to ensure that we abide by the rules.
Following on the COVID issue, we woke up this morning to news that the Commissioner of Police is down with COVID-19. First of all, I want to express on behalf of the party, on behalf of all of us, our sympathies, and we do wish that he would recover as quickly
As possible. Yeah.
But if the Commissioner of Police can be inflicted by COVID-19, what signal is it sending to the rest of the population?
Nobody's hide on COVID. And I think this is just a sign to say that we can't have COVID out of hand.
Yes.
This is just a sign that, we need real leadership. We need real persons in place who can get this thing under control and not just come with the facade and the PR and hold press conferences and talk about stuff, but actually get the work done.
I'm sure the Commissioner of Police, though, would have been adhering to the protocols, because I've seen him out there on the stump in his mask. And the fact of the matter is that for him to have contracted COVID-19, it simply means that we have to be very, very cautious.
Careful, yeah.
Very, very
Careful.
when we are out there. Do you think that it will affect COVID-19, the turnout in elections in your constituency?
I think so. In every constituency you have, persons who are 65 and older, persons who are, more prone to
or persons who have underlying
health issues. Yeah. So, they'll have a bit of a drawback not to come out and vote. But I think once the EOJ and the People's National Party put the proper systems in place and ensure that, all hands are on deck and everybody is safe, I think we should be good.
In other words, if we were to practice the protocols in the way that you are doing in your constituency, you believe that we'll be able to get a lot of people to come out.
Yeah. So that on September 3rd, we'll form the next government.
So on September the 3rd, we do what?
We'll form the next
And
government.
you're asking the people to do what when they go to vote?
Put your X beside the head, vote for the People's National Party, vote for your future.
Kishan Reed, thank you very much for
Thank
being
you.
with us.
Building your Kingston, building Clarendon, building your Central, Portland to Westmoreland, building your St. Bess, building St. Catherine, yes, St. Mary now get left, and over to the west, building up St. James, St. Thomas have the wave, building Manchester name, Chilani we are clear, hey, building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, build it up, build it up, hospital and school, farmer plant more food, build it up, more factory like a road that improve, build it up, put the X beside the head, that's what you're gonna do, build it up, we are build Jamaica for me and you.
Welcome back to the PNP Live and Direct. In this segment, we're going to be looking at education. And there's no better person to discuss education within the context of the People's National Party than Mrs. Elaine Foster Allen. Mrs. Allen, of course, is a renowned educator. She is a former principal of Shortwood Teachers College and also former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education. Welcome, Mrs. Allen.
Thank you very much, Delana, for having me.
I'm here to speak education. Of course, we can't do that without looking at COVID-19. From where you sit, how has COVID-19 impacted education in Jamaica, and what are some of the things that we need to do in order to be able to deal with the challenges?
Sure. So to start with, we just have to recognize that all our children, all our teachers, many parents have been impacted in one way or another by COVID-19. COVID-19 clearly has challenged the education system to think, reflect, and do some new things. What we have found is that the system has not been able to prepare or to respond as effectively as it should. COVID-19 has created a situation where teachers and students have to be doing things virtually. When you think about virtual education, you have to think about the equipment, whether it's laptops or iPads, but you also have to think about bandwidth to get those, to get the lessons through to a cross-section of Jamaica. You also have to think about the possibility of expanding and using radio and television, all right? Now, some of that has happened, but when I think about it, the more I think about it and the more I listen, I recognize that in the past 6 months, there are things that should have been done that have not been done.
What are some of those things?
For example, over the past 4 years, not a single tablet has been distributed to our children.
Despite the promise that was
Despite the promise, not a single tablet. 6 months now, and we still haven't had those tablets. So I would have imagined that down at the Ministry of Education, somebody should have been working really hard to get those tablets procured and in the hands of children.
So
because, hold on a little bit, sir. Because when you look globally, COVID-19 has not disappeared. It has spiked, it has had its troughs, but it's still with us. So whatever we're doing in education has to be done in the context of a virus that is not going anywhere fast.
The present government has pushed back the date as to when schools should open. Can the necessary adjustments be made with what is happening now in that period of time for schools to open on the date which has been announced?
If the laptops and iPads are on the wharf, then yes, you could make some real adjustments. I'm not thinking now about reopening schools on the 5th of October.
It's not possible, you think?
I don't think it's possible.
Why you don't think?
Because I think we would have had to have those. Remember, the teachers were promised 25,000 iPads, laptops. Only 9,000 has gone out. Now you need an infrastructure, a robust infrastructure, a technology infrastructure that can provide the virtual teaching that teachers and children will need to engage in. On top of that, there are many families who let me just give you a little story.
Sure.
I was looking after a child, you know, he calls me auntie, between March and June. I am a seasoned teacher. I could not cope with the demands of actually doing homeschooling for that child with all the other things that I had. I have
an educator,
me
not
an
able to cope.
educator.
What about those persons
Exactly. So, you know, how do we support parents?
Right.
And then supporting them to be effective teachers at home, in inverted commas, is one thing. but supporting them when they have jobs to go to. Some of them still have jobs to go to. What sort of structure can we put in place? So here's what we've been discussing over time. There was a position that we in the People's National Party Education Task Force and others had taken, which said, why don't we go back to school when we are clearer and when we have the infrastructural things in place, the laptops, the iPads, the bandwidth, and so on in place, so that we could do a rotation.
In other words, what you're saying is that a People's National Party government would have to listen to the educators and listen to people like yourself in terms of putting forward proposals so that they are comfortable as to when to open
Absolutely. We need to listen to teachers,
Yes.
we need to listen to what parents are saying, and we need to listen to the children, right? There are a lot of children who are just fearful of going back into a school setting.
There was a period of time when the Ministry of Education never had a direct line minister of education.
Delano,
To what
if
extent?
we are serious
Yes.
in this country about educating our citizens, we cannot afford to not have a Minister of Education for so long.
Do you think that has also impacted the preparation re-COVID-19?
I think so. I think so, because if you don't have somebody who is totally in charge and going out there and making sure that these things are done, then you're going to have lapses. And of course you have an acting permanent secretary and you have an acting chief education officer. So
There's a lot of acting taking place now.
well, it's unfortunate. I feel sorry for my colleagues.
Your
I
colleagues
still
who are
see
not
them
there.
as colleagues,
Yes.
because at the end of the day, you don't play with education. Education is what transforms a generation of people who have lived in poverty to people who can walk around in dignity. My sister and I used to say, we come from a house, we used to call it 1 bedroom and outer hall. But look what education has done for me. It is possible for all our children. Cannot underestimate the value of education. Absolutely
So you're
not.
saying that the People's National Party has, over the years, and will treat with education
As a priority, yes.
What are some of those things coming from the manifesto of the party with which you are so close
Well,
that you would wish to see implemented
right.
to demonstrate to the people out there that this party treats with education
Yes.
in a very serious way?
yes. And I have the pages here,
Oh yes, and
So
it's
I
all
want to
located so
make
that they
sure
understand.
that everyone sees
Yes.
effective early childhood and primary education.
What would we be doing there?
Here are some of the things we'll be doing. I'm going to pick maybe a couple from
Sure.
each. In early childhood education, in 2019 to 2020, the current government was only able to allocate over nearly $4 billion to early childhood education. I think we'd have to double it or triple it. And if you look at what we have in our manifesto, you will see that things like infrastructure, giving grant in aid status to some of these privately run or community run basic schools, giving them trained teachers. When P.J. Patterson was our Prime Minister, he promised that for every basic school with 100 children, there would be a trained teacher. That has not been accomplished, right? So we said we would go back to that.
Out there listening to you and you're
Yes.
making some important point. Why is it so important for us to place emphasis on early childhood education? Because there's a view out there that it ought to be primary or secondary or tertiary.
It's not
Why
an
is the foundation
it's not
so
an
important?
if. It's not a either or situation that
Yes.
we're dealing with when we talk about education. We must understand the importance of each phase of education.
Yes.
early childhood education is extremely important, and I'll say that for all the sectors, because you see that first three
Formative years.
the
Yes,
formative
first 3
years,
years.
man, if you don't get it right. And that is why we have said the first 1,000 days or first 3 years, we will ensure that we have an early stimulation program. Now, what the
That's the
current
People's National Party.
People's
That's
National
first
Party, I want to
1,000
make a
days.
distinction.
Yes.
What we have now through the current government is an early stimulation program for children with special educational needs. Not all early childhood children have special educational needs. Some do have, and they need to be addressed. What we're saying, the formative years are extremely important for all children. And there was a roving caregivers program some years ago, which, interestingly enough, it was people who were para-trained as caregivers and teachers who went out into the communities, worked with the parents, worked with the children to stimulate them, tactile, things to touch, things developing their hearing and their speech and their mobility and all of those things, and helping them with conversation and basic literacy and math and so on. So those things are the things we need to do. You have to target your sectors.
Sure. Anything in the manifesto, read it.
See
Teachers, as it relates to
Yes,
early
man.
childhood education.
Yes.
Yes.
Because so far, only, I think it's about the ratio of teachers, trained teachers in early childhood sector there is very low.
Yes.
And what we have said is that apart from the fact that we will have the grant in aid early childhood infant parts of the schools, so that will mean trained teachers. You have to have trained teachers. You have to have, if it's a department of a primary school, we will have a trained teacher in that place there as the head of the department, because early childhood educators are specialists in that phase of education. Cannot undermine
So the
that.
People's National Party would be looking towards, in government,
Yes, sir.
to increase the number of trained educators that
Yep.
we have at the early childhood level.
Absolutely.
Right.
We have to.
Sure, absolutely. Primary.
Primary
sector.
education. Primary
And I'm sure that
education.
you have your
I have my, let me just show you this. So this, yes, yes. See it here now. Early childhood and primary education.
Primary education.
Yes.
Anything on primary education you wish to say
We
from the
have,
manifesto?
one of the things that we have found as we have gone around schools is that a lot of the infrastructure in our primary and all-age schools leaves much to be desired. There are children who are still sitting, and under COVID, you cannot sit children 3 and 4 bottoms on a little bench. We have to put in the infrastructure. Under the national standard curriculum, children are expected to demonstrate their ability in the arts, in movement, dance, and crafts and things like that. We do not at this time have the space that is required for that to happen.
So how
And
does
you
it
know,
be dealing with the space and
infrastructure,
COVID-19
you know,
in term- Yes, I know.
yes, yes.
I know.
Rotation.
Right. And
Delano.
when you say rotation, to that
It
person listening out
means,
there, what it
okay,
means.
it means that when we start back,
When the People's
and we're
National Party government
exactly,
starts, right.
and when we're still under COVID, but we take a decision that, given the context that we've created in schools for education, these are the things we can do. We can have our children in small groups go to school. One day it would be grade 1, one day it would be grade 2, one day it would be grade 3. It is going to cost us, but it is, I think we have to sit down and say, regardless of the cost, we're going to ensure that the health of our children and the education of our children, the health of our teachers, and those things that are necessary must be put in place.
How are you going to get the stakeholders to buy into having the kind of social distancing and rotation
Do you know-
that you're talking about
do you know,
at the primary level?
I sat with some basic school teachers a couple months ago in June, I think, or the beginning of July, and we worked out how you could actually get the basic schools. You're talking about the 3 and 4-year-olds. You group them, right? So you are always in your group. When it comes to break time, your group goes out. So at least you are containing, right?
And following the
And
protocols.
following the protocols. You teach the children every day how to sanitize, how to wash their hands, and it becomes part of the routine. Children have found it a little difficult to keep their masks on. So your lesson must be done in such a way that every 10 minutes the children, and you have to be regimental, you get the children to take their masks off.
Them in culture.
And yes, you
How
have
do
to
we do
train
this?
them.
I know we're getting the wrap-up time, but,
Yes.
but secondary education is so important.
Oh wow, secondary
From the-
education.
the
Yes,
manifesto.
yes.
Tell us what are some of the plans by the People's National Party as it relates to secondary education.
Right.
And as you tail in that, you can just also speak
I'll
to
just
tertiary.
speak to tertiary. So in secondary education, we are concerned about keeping all of our children in a 7-year program, all right? At this point in time, we have a tailing off after grade 9. We have been losing perhaps between 8 and 10,000 children to the system every year. We just don't see them. We need to capture those children and we need to ensure that they are educated. That's one. 2, every school must be a quality school, a great quality school. And so we have said that there will be infrastructural development, 50 schools per year. We will take the National Education Inspectorate reports and look at them. We'll review them to see what they're saying about the infrastructural provision. We will work with our education officers at the Ministry of Education. There's a unit that does furnishing and the building officers and so on. The National Education Trust used to work with buildings and infrastructure. So we're going to hit the ground running, right? Because we know what needs to
So
happen.
the emphasis in terms of
We,
secondary
one
education.
minute,
Go
Delano.
ahead.
We have to end the apartheid system in education.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by
Every
this thing?
school must become a great school.
Yes.
Every school must become a great school. And I believe that every teacher in Jamaica has the capacity to be great and to contribute greatness in their classrooms. You are not caregivers. Our schools are not caregiving institutions. Yes, we care about our children, but we are there to educate our children and liberate them from this mental slavery that says all you need is a pair of Clarks. You need more than that.
Right.
For the next generation. We are into education to liberate. We want Marcus Messiah Garvey to be proud of us, even in his grave.
In other words,
Man.
education, good quality education.
Good quality education.
Will allow those who are out there to
Yes.
buy Clarks when they leave the school.
If that is what they need, because Clarks is not the only thing.
Absolutely. Tertiary education.
Tertiary
Anything that you wish to
education.
say to us?
Everybody has been saying, boy, what about this one child?
Yes,
This
the
one child.
offering.
We are offering, and it is very important, scholarships and for training, because sometimes we get it mixed up. Is it just in university? But there are scholarships for training, because right now competencies are important.
Absolutely.
And as we are moving into this COVID era, we're gonna have to think technology. What can people do? What can our young people do virtually? We're gonna think about agriculture. We have it in here. We need to transform the case for food security, right? So we're gonna have those things. Yeah, man.
Repeat for us.
Okay, the one child.
Repeat for us that one child proposal.
The one child proposal is that we have the money in this country to give a scholarship to one child in every family. It is possible. Let me tell you something. When we checked out what corruption has cost us, $14 billion, Delano, right? I had to write it down. $14 billion.
In other words,
right?
What we can
That
deal
could
with
be
over 4 years.
14,000 university scholarships.
14,000
14,000 university scholarships.
In other
I
words,
want you to hear me. I want the young
yes.
people to hear me.
Absolutely.
We could have built 140,000 school spaces
With the $14 billion.
with the $14 billion. We could have bought 400,000 laptops or iPads at $240 a piece for our children.
What that $14 billion could have had in terms of student loan.
I close my case.
I know your case is closed, but what you're also saying is that that 14 billion could have replaced the
loans
given to all of the persons from student loan
Absolutely,
bureau this
because I think it is in 2015-16, there was an injection of about $4 billion into student loan. All right.
Let me end this way.
Yeah.
Let me end by asking you this. Because persons out there might be asking themselves the question, yes, the People's National Party will be doing all of these things. What is it that will make us do it and not be seen as a promise?
Just taking the action that is required.
Yeah.
And we have the people in place, and we can find the money, and just make sure that we use good governance strategies, right? So nobody will steal anything. Nobody will get anything under the table.
The table.
Everything will be up front. It is about creating a Jamaica that you and I can be proud of.
Mrs. Elaine Foster Allen, educator, with a lot of ideas coming out of the People's National Party manifesto as to what we will be doing as a government when we are elected. Thank you very much for being here with us.
You're most
on this
welcome.
discussion.
You're most welcome.
Tell me something. Don't you realize the corrupt JLP government is costing you a better life? Billions of your tax dollars have been wasted and remain unaccounted for. Don't you think that money could have given you access to running water, healthcare? Who can you trust to put you and your family first? It's time to build your Jamaica.
Put your X beside the head. Vote PNP.
Welcome back to this segment of PNP Live and Direct. Today we have with us our guest, Venetia Phillips, Comrade Venetia Phillips, who is the PNP's candidate in Eastern St. Andrew. Venetia Phillips is the current councillor for the Papine Division, and Venetia Phillips has offered herself as the candidate for the People's National Party, going up against Favour Williams from the Jamaica Labour Party. And we have Venetia inside here, as we will be having other persons representing and comrades representing the party to discuss what is happening in the constituency, her plans and how she plans to execute them, and how she plans to bring home the seat for the People's National Party. What is your plan for Eastern St. Andrew?
Well, put it this way. First of all, in order to plan for Eastern St. Andrew, you have to understand the dynamics of Eastern St. Andrew. I think that is what is missing for the last 4.5 years, or, as my rival has said, 6.5 years of presence in the area, and the kind of unstructured, haphazard way in which we have operated as a constituency is symptomatic of the absence of any kind of plan, any kind of intention to bring order and development to Eastern. So what is my plan?
Done nothing at all.
Nothing tangible, nothing substantial, nothing sustainable, nothing to write home about, and nothing certainly to get her re-elected to the position of Member of Parliament for Eastern St. Andrew.
Right.
So what's my plan?
What is it?
So based on consultation with the residents, pre-COVID of course, across the constituency, we would have done soundings, we would have knocked on doors, and we would have gone to citizens associations and other social groups across the constituency just to hear from the people of Eastern St. Andrew. And the common thread coming out, regardless of social status across the constituency, crime was, of major concern, whether you live in Augustown, yes, or you live in Jarrett Lane. Crime was a vexed issue for all concerned across Eastern St. Andrew.
What are your plans to deal with crime in Eastern St. Andrew?
Well, put it this way, I've come up with a strategic position that I've been discussing with the JCF and will share with citizens in the coming week through my manifesto, constituency manifesto.
Police, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are having a two-pronged approach. We're going to be disaggregating the crime situation in our constituency. We're going to look at the robberies and the other larceny-related crimes that are taking place, particularly in the middle-class communities. And then we're going to be dealing with the domestic crimes as well as gang violence that's affecting other sections.
When you say we are going to be dealing with it, what do you mean?
Because Eastern St. Andrew is a constituency, not an office of a member of parliament.
Right.
You are elected to represent people, and what it therefore means is that you must consult. They must be a part of that social process if they are to engage in it and protect it. And so, no, it is not what I will do, but what we as a body of Eastern St. Andrews, a constituency family, will do. And that is why my approach is a consultative one. My approach is one where I believe we share whatever best practices we have, we listen to the people, and then we come up with the fix.
But there was a time when I can remember there was a celebration of a year, if not more, without any homicide, any killing in that constituency. And then all of a sudden, back on the front line, how is it that you're going to be able to just keep and sustain that constituency just not having the kind of violence that it has now?
So in the middle class areas where the main issue as it pertains to crime is actually robberies and car theft, we have come up with a strategy that we're now discussing with the police. It is the intention to secure, whether by donation or procuring, 2 motor vehicles as community patrols. Those will be operated by members of the JCF. We are hoping, as we're having the discussions with the JCF just now, to utilize district constables and possibly off-duty police personnel. Based on our discussions, there are some legal implications as well as systemic, whether or how these persons will be chosen, because the intention is to have them on a stipend. Now, that obviously will have to come through some system accounted for through the CDF. We do know, as a matter of course, that police officers are in fact able to take on additional duties, and this has to be authorized. And so we are working out just how this would work to make sure that we are within the legal framework of that. We can provide our citizens with the guarantee that we will have 24-hour surveillance through CCTV, which will be supported by our community patrol system in the middle class areas. So let's turn our attention to the domestic violence and those areas that continue to be plagued by gang warfare.
I mentioned some of the domestic, the middle class areas of which you speak. You mentioned Augustown earlier, but so that all of us can have a feel of the makeup of the constituency.
Right. So let me just say that we have an electoral population of over 28,000 in Eastern St. Andrew. That is spread across some 20 to 21 communities, to include our middle class communities. Those are like the Beverly Hills, the Karachis, the Mona Heights, Glenview, Mountain Terrace, College Green. We also have Ravinia, Barbican Terrace, Hope Pastures proper. So we have University Crescent. So we have a quite large middle class component to it. There is the Great House Boulevard and in fact Golden Circle over in Papine. So in order to be able to deal with the issues that are there, which are largely robberies and car theft, we have come up with a plan that we will be sharing with citizens based on feedback from them. And that involves what I mentioned earlier about having the community patrol, supporting that with real-time monitoring through CCTV. The whole business of CCTV in Eastern St. Andrew has to be given primacy of place and cannot continue to be a talk shop, which is what has endured over the last 4.5 years. we will actually realize this.
Is there an unemployment issue in the
A
constituency?
grave
So how we plan to deal
unemployment
with it?
issue in Eastern St. Andrew. And this, by the way, might surprise you. It is not limited to the middling classes, as some journalists like to call it, but it is also in our middle class areas where persons who are qualified, who have gone through universities, are not able to get jobs or even sustainable jobs. And as a consequence, it is something that we have to look at based on its scale and type. So we have to come down to disaggregating the skill sets, looking at the qualification level. So we are creating a skills bank as we speak. We have some 5,000 names already, and we're putting them into categories. What we have started to do also is to engage the commercial centers in and around our constituency, as well as the universities, because one of the things we want to create is a real university town where persons are able to live and work wherever
So you
possible.
have some plans to
In the,
deal with
yes,
the
we do.
unemployment issue, don't we? What about
And
school
the
jobs?
manifesto, as it gets out to our constituents, will shed some more light on that.
You're talking about the constituency manifesto.
Yes, we have a constituency
Social
manifesto.
issues? Any
Social issues.
challenges you have
So
there?
let's start with the one that I believe resonates with all Jamaica, not just Eastern St. Andrew, JPS. In Hope Pastures, for example, we have the residents there who have had to take JPS to court. I mean, I think it might not necessarily be because of bills, but because of the technical framework and how it impacts the residents in Hope Pastures. But as it pertains to the billing system of JPS and just the type of service delivery in some areas where we have voltage issues, it is something that we're going to have to deal with. Water is another big problem that we have in Eastern St. Andrew. And areas like Augustown, Jarrett Lane, and Mona Common tend to have serious water issues. We're so close to the dam, yet still we continue to suffer from the lack of consistent water supply. Our road network, thankfully, under Andre Hilton, more than 75% of the road network in Mona Division would have been properly addressed by Andre Hilton. In the last 4.5 years, that has been ignored. And so over time, because of wear and tear, we have some issues we will have to move with alacrity to address. In Papine Division as councillor, I've been there 2 terms, and I've done some 29 roads. I can't speak to the 2.5 roads that my now rival would have addressed. And so the people of Eastern St. Andrew are in dire need of real leadership, and that is what they will have come the night of September 3rd.
So as we come to the close of this particular conversation now, it's regarded as a battleground constituency. What is it that you would wish to tell those who are going to vote for you as to why they should vote for you? I can't keep emphasizing that.
As a resident of Eastern St. Andrews, those who don't understand how we think in that constituency will tend to regard it in this way. We are just the kind of constituency in Jamaica of the 63 that believe that issues and service delivery will always be our driving force, regardless of social group. So whether you live along the Mountain View belt, you live in Standpipe, or you're up in Highlight View, or you're in Beverly Hills or the middle class area, you want the kind of service delivery that you got out of your homes and went to the polls for. And that is the reason that they're all going to be going out on September 3 to ensure that we get a member of parliament who is conversant with the issues we're facing and who we believe will give us the kind of service delivery that we deserve.
They're asking them to put the X beside the
And
head,
they
the
will,
X
and they've
beside
been
Denise
committing.
Phillips, and they're
They've
committing.
been committing. Our voter turnout is
Yes.
going to be higher than 54%, even though we have COVID, restrictions in place. The energy is there, and we look forward to celebrating on September 3.
Very good. Venetia Phillips, thank you very much. Candidate of the People's National Party for Eastern St. Andrew. And she has said that she will be taking it home for the People's National Party. Thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Tell me something. You think you really matter to the JLP government? Can you sleep with your windows and doors open? Aren't you tired of worrying if your children will make it home safely? Who can you trust to put you and your family first? It's time to build your Jamaica.
Put your X beside the head. Vote PNP.
Welcome back to PNP Live and Direct. I'm Kishan Reed. our party leader and the 10th Prime Minister of Jamaica, was in Northwest Clarendon, drumming up support for Richard Azan. Let us take a look as to what the party leader had to say.
We have a special task to perform because Northwest Clarendon has had good representation from Richard Azan for many, many years. And we intend to elect him again as the standard bearer of the People's National Party. But one of the key tasks that we have to perform is to bring water to the households here in Northwest Clarendon. Communities like Silent Hill, Cumberland, and other communities around that need water. For 4 striking years, the Jamaica Labour Party government has done nothing to improve the water supply conditions of Northwest Clarendon. We are going to make that change, and we're going to also undertake the transformation of agriculture with land titling, so that who have land and work in the land can get a title and become a main stakeholder in the economic life of the country. As we move on, comrades, we're going to talk about more things, about training for the youth, about rent to own your own house with NHT, because we come to build a Jamaica that works for everybody. We are building your Jamaica, the people's Jamaica, that have an opportunity for everybody. We are on the move. It looks like everywhere we go, with laborers and everyone to come and follow back away. So we'll go for Ramsey and then we'll follow back away. Listen.
Thank you for watching another edition of PNP Live and Direct. I'm Kishan Reed and this is Delana Franklin. See you next time. And on election day, put your eggs beside the head.